You are being told that the key to health is finding the right diet, the right supplements, the right eating window, but here is what no one is explaining to you. The real problem is not what you eat. The real problem is the fear and confusion you bring to the table every single day. That anxiety is destroying your health faster than any food ever could, and it is teaching your family to live the same way. There is an ancient practice that removes this chaos, and it has nothing to do with counting calories or eliminating food groups. Today, I will show you how a single disciplined act before every meal restores calm, clarity, and authority to your body and your legacy. I am Rabbi Ben, and today we look at something affecting millions of adults right now. You open your phone and see one expert telling you to avoid carbohydrates. Another insists you must eat them. Someone warns you about seed oils. Another claims they are harmless. You stand in the grocery store holding a package of food, and instead of gratitude or confidence, you feel confusion and fear. This is the age of food anxiety. The problem is not that information exists. The problem is that the flood of conflicting messages has stolen your authority. You no longer trust your own judgment about something as basic as feeding yourself. You have replaced the simple act of nourishing your body with a daily interrogation of whether you are making the right choice. This constant second-guessing does not make you healthier. It makes you exhausted. It makes you reactive. And it quietly teaches your family that eating is something to be afraid of. I am not here to add another diet or another rule. I am here to show you how to restore calm, clarity, and responsibility to your table. Because the real issue is not what you eat. The real issue is how you approach the act of eating itself, and that is where we must begin. When you sit down to a meal, what is the first thing that enters your mind? For many of you, it is not gratitude, it is worry. You look at the food and immediately begin calculating. Is this too much? Is this the wrong kind? Should I have chosen something else? This mental noise does not stop at your thoughts. It affects your body. Stress tightens your stomach. It disrupts digestion. It turns what should be a moment of nourishment into a battlefield. And over time, this stress creates two opposite but equally damaging patterns. Some of you respond by becoming rigid. You control every bite, every portion, every ingredient, until eating becomes a joyless task. Others of you respond by giving up entirely. You overindulge, not out of hunger, but out of frustration with the constant pressure. Both responses are signs of the same problem. You are living reactively instead of intentionally. You have allowed fear to sit at the head of your table, and fear is a terrible guide. It does not lead to health. It leads to cycles of guilt, shame, and exhaustion. What you need is not more information about nutrition. What you need is a framework that allows you to eat with peace and responsibility. That framework begins with understanding that food is not separate from the rest of your life. It is part of a larger ethical structure, and that structure is what we are going to rebuild together. Let me tell you why this matters beyond your own health. The way you eat teaches your children and grandchildren how to relate to their bodies and to abundance. If you approach meals with fear, they learn to see food as a source of anxiety. If you eat reactively, swinging between control and indulgence, they absorb that instability. If you second-guess every choice, they grow up believing they cannot trust themselves. This is not a small thing. The habits you model at your table shape the next generation. And right now, we are raising a generation that views eating as a problem to be solved rather than a blessing to be received. This is part of your legacy. The question is whether you will leave behind a foundation of peace and responsibility or a pattern of fear and confusion. Restoring calm to your meals is not just about feeling better. It is about creating stability for those who come after you. It is about teaching stewardship instead of anxiety. It is about showing your family that wisdom, not fear, governs your choices. And that begins with a single practice that has been used for thousands of years to bring order and gratitude to the table. If you are ready to address this, I want to hear from you. Write in the comments, "My food worry is," and then tell me your biggest current struggle. Be specific, because naming the problem is the first step towards solving it. The principle I am about to share with you is simple, but do not mistake simplicity for weakness. A blessing before eating is not superstition. It is not wishful thinking. It is a discipline of awareness. When you pause before you take the first bite and acknowledge the source of what is in front of you, something fundamental shifts. You create a moment of respect. You remind yourself that this food did not appear by accident. It came from soil, from labor, from provision, and that reminder changes how you consume it. This is not abstract. Psychological research on mindfulness confirms what ancient wisdom has always known. A pause before action creates space for better decision-making. It slows you down. It redirects your attention from fear to gratitude. And gratitude is a stabilizer. It does not eliminate hunger or preferences, but it governs how you respond to them. Think of it this way. A foundation must be laid before a house is built. A blessing before eating is the foundation of the meal. It sets the tone. It establishes the framework. Without it, you are building on sand, and every choice feels unstable. With it, you are building on rock, and your decisions flow from a place of calm authority. This is not a feeling you wait to experience. This is a law you choose to obey. And when you obey it consistently, it transforms not just your meals, but your relationship with your own body. Your body is not your enemy. I need you to hear that clearly, because too many of you have been taught to treat it as something that must be controlled, restricted, and disciplined into submission. That is a broken way of thinking. Your body is not a rebellious child. It is a responsibility. It is something you have been given to steward, to care for, to maintain with wisdom and respect. Stewardship means balanced choices, not extreme measures. It means eating with intention, not with fear or guilt. When you see food as part of stewardship, you stop swinging between rigid dieting and careless overindulgence. You stop treating every meal as a test you might fail. Instead, you ask a different question. What does this body need to function well today? What honors the responsibility I have been given? That question leads to consistency. And consistency, not perfection, is what builds health over time. Consider a farmer who tends his land. He does not exhaust the soil one season and abandon it the next. He rotates crops. He rests the ground. He works with steady, patient care because he understands that the land is his to steward, not to exploit. Your body is no different. It requires the same steady, patient care. It requires you to lead with wisdom instead of reacting with fear. And when you approach eating this way, you do not just improve your health, you deepen the ethical framework that governs your entire life, because how you treat your body reveals how you understand responsibility itself. Let me explain something about the connection between stress and the choices you make. When you are anxious, your judgment narrows. Your brain shifts into a reactive mode where immediate relief becomes more important than long-term wisdom. This is why people who approach meals with worry often eat too quickly, portion carelessly, or reach for comfort instead of nourishment. The stress itself undermines the very health they are trying to protect. Now consider what happens when you introduce calm into that moment. A simple blessing before eating creates a psychological boundary. It interrupts the rush. It gives your mind a chance to settle before your hand moves toward the plate. And in that brief pause, something changes. You become capable of wiser decisions. You notice when you are eating out of true hunger versus eating out of habit or emotion. You slow down, and slower eating improves digestion and satisfaction. This is not theory. Study after study confirms that people who eat mindfully consume less, enjoy their food more, and experience better metabolic outcomes. The blessing is not magic. It is structure. It is a deliberate act that protects you from your own reactivity. And when you repeat it consistently, meal after meal, day after day, it trains your nervous system to associate eating with calm instead of chaos. This is how you build health that lasts, not through willpower alone, but through rituals that create the conditions for wise action. The calm you establish at your table will extend into other areas of your life, because discipline in one area strengthens discipline everywhere. There is a deeper reason why so many of you struggle with food, and it is not about nutrition, it is about fear. You are afraid that if you do not control every detail, something will go wrong. You are afraid that abundance will harm you. You are afraid that you cannot be trusted with your own choices. This fear comes from a belief in scarcity and a loss of confidence in provision. But I want you to consider a different perspective. What if the food on your table is not a threat but a gift? What if there is a source of provision that is greater than your worry? Acknowledging that source is not passivity, it is trust. And trust is what allows you to make decisions from a place of stability instead of panic. When you say a blessing before eating, you are reminding yourself that you are not alone in this. You are not carrying the entire burden of your health on your shoulders. You are part of a larger order, and that order includes provision, rhythm, and care. This does not mean you abandon responsibility. It means you stop living as though everything depends on your constant vigilance. And when you release that crushing pressure, your mind clears. You stop obsessing. You stop second-guessing every bite. You develop steady habits because you are no longer driven by fear. This is what it means to trust provision. It is not blind hope. It is confident action rooted in the belief that wisdom, discipline, and gratitude will lead to good outcomes over time. If this principle has resonated with you, I want to hear which one has spoken most clearly. Write in the comments, gratitude, stewardship, or calm. Tell me which word has given you the most clarity so far. Now we move from understanding to action. I am going to give you a simple practice that you can begin today. Before every meal, before you take the first bite, you will pause and say a short blessing. It does not need to be long, it does not need to be complicated, it only needs to be sincere and consistent. Here is what I suggest. You can adapt the words to fit your own tradition, but the structure remains the same. You acknowledge the source of the food, you express gratitude for it, and you commit to receiving it with respect. For example, you might say, I am grateful for this food and for the provision that brought it to my table. I receive it with respect, and I will care for the body I have been given to steward. Say it slowly. Do not rush through it. Let the words settle in your mind before you begin eating. This creates a boundary between the stress of your day and the act of nourishment. It transforms the meal from something you do automatically into something you do intentionally. And that intention matters. It is the difference between eating as a reaction and eating as an act of self-leadership. Some of you may feel awkward at first. That is normal. You have spent years eating without this kind of structure, but awkwardness fades with repetition. What remains is the benefit: a calm mind, a grateful heart, and a body that receives food with dignity instead of fear. This is the practice. It is simple, but it is powerful, and it is yours to begin today. A practice only becomes powerful when it becomes a habit. You cannot do this once and expect transformation. You must do it consistently, meal after meal, until it becomes automatic. This is how discipline is built. Not through dramatic changes, but through small actions repeated with intention. I want you to attach this blessing to every meal: breakfast, lunch, dinner, even a snack, if it is substantial enough to require your attention. Every time you sit down to eat, you pause. You say the words, you create the boundary. At first, you will need to remind yourself. You may forget. You may eat halfway through a meal before you remember. That is fine. When you remember, pause right there and say the blessing anyway. The goal is not perfection. The goal is consistency, and over time the repetition will train your mind. The act of sitting down to eat will automatically trigger the pause. You will no longer need to think about it. It will simply happen. And when that occurs, you have built a structure that supports you without effort. This is the power of small, repeated actions. They compound. They strengthen. They become the foundation on which greater stability is built. And here is what you will notice. As this habit solidifies around meals, you will find it easier to build discipline in other areas of your life. The same principle applies everywhere. Consistency creates strength. Structure creates freedom. And the peace you establish at your table will ripple outward into your work, your relationships, and your legacy. We have covered a great deal, but let me bring it all together. Gratitude creates the framework. Calm creates the space for wise decisions. Stewardship creates the responsibility that guides your choices. And when these three work together, they remove fear from eating. You no longer approach meals as a test you might fail or a threat you must manage. You approach them as moments of intentional care. Each meal becomes a chance to reinforce your values, to practice discipline, and to honor the body you have been given. This is not about perfection. This is not about never making a choice you later regret. This is about establishing a foundation of peace and responsibility that allows you to navigate food with clarity instead of chaos. And that foundation will serve you for the rest of your life. It will serve your family. It will serve the legacy you are building with every decision you make. I want to leave you with this. The table is not just where you eat. It is where you teach. It is where you lead. And the peace you bring to that table, the gratitude you express, the calm you maintain, these are the qualities your children and grandchildren will remember. They will not remember the specific foods you chose. They will remember how you made them feel. They will remember whether meals were marked by anxiety or by stability. You have the power to shape that memory. You have the power to create a different pattern. And it begins with a single, simple act of discipline repeated every day. If you are ready to commit to this, I want you to write in the comments, "I choose peace at my table." Let that be your declaration. Let that be your commitment, and let us build this foundation together.